course, Rick, you being a legend for the Golden State Warriors, your number 24 jersey's retired over there. Just break it down for me right now. What are your thoughts on the Golden State Warriors this season so far? They're looking like they're in championship form.
Well, they probably wish that they were playing this good at the end of the season, going into the playoffs. I mean, there's still a long road to go down before you get there. But if they play at this level and continue to improve, which you should be trying to do every time you're playing, is you want to get better. And then they still don't have Clay. You don't know what's going to happen with Wiseman. So, I mean, if those two guys come along and produce, they're going to be a very dangerous team, no question about it. But again, it's how are you playing at the end of the season? What's the health of the team at that time? But for this stage of the season, they are without question a huge surprise. I think they're the biggest surprise in the league, to be perfectly honest. I don't think there's anyone that thought the Warriors would get off to the kind of start that they're getting off to, and playing with the kind of confidence that they are, and playing. One of the big things is they're really playing outstanding team defense. The defense has been really good, and that's where you have to put that as the cornerstone and the base of what your success is going to be all about. It's got to be a commitment from the team defensive concept to give yourself a chance. So when you have those games, when you do the little roller coaster ride of offense, because defense can be that constant for you. And so they're doing a great job with that. They've got a lot of guys who have stepped up and are doing a nice, playing really well, probably beyond the expectations that anybody had prior to the season. So it's been fun to see, and hopefully they'll stay healthy and Clay will come back and be somewhere close to the way he was before he left. The type of injuries that he's coming off, if there's any player that it wouldn't impact as much, I think it's Clay, because of the way that he plays. He's not the kind of guy that's really quick going, setting his own shots up and stuff. I mean, you give this guy a split second, he's got a shot off, and he's liable to make it from most anywhere. So if there's any impact on him, it might be the individual defense, but individual defense isn't what wins you championships. It's team defense that wins championships. And Clay knows about playing team defense. He may not be as good and as quick as he used to be defensively, but I'm not worried about that part of it.
Now, speaking of players that have stepped up this season, really gone to another level, in my opinion, Paul George has been doing a great job for the LA Clippers. And for fans over here in the UK, the Warriors are taking on the Clippers this weekend in the primetime matchup. What are your thoughts ahead of that one? What are you looking out for from both teams, and who do you think will take the win?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously the Warriors, the way that they're playing right now, should be a team that would be favored a little bit, because the Clippers aren't at full strength. I mean, the guy may be better than Paul George actually all around. I mean, and he's not even getting a chance to play. We're talking about Kawhi, of course. And, so you can't really figure out what's going to happen with the Clippers until he comes back and he starts playing. Just like with the Warriors, you don't know how Clay is going to mesh, but I think because of his style of play, he'll mesh in really well, because it's the pass, cut, move. And so he'll fit into that. That's the way they played when they had that great 5-year run. Wiseman's the big question mark, but I think for the Clippers, it really comes down to getting Kawhi back and seeing where he's going to be from a physical standpoint. And Paul has done what he needs to do. I mean, a great player has to step up his game. When you're missing someone like Kawhi, you've got to do a little bit more, as do the other players. But it's not a situation of going out, I'm going to go out, I got to go score more points. No, what you have to do is just stay focused more. You have to commit yourself to the defense. You have to work on getting rebounds. You should never go out on the basketball court thinking about, I got to go score 40 points for us to win. That's just not going to work.
We've just got one last question for you. What we like to do on our show over here is get guys to give us their all-time starting five from any NBA player who have ever played in the NBA. Who would be the greatest lineup of all time, in your opinion?
Well, I'm playing the small forward spot. And then I'm taking Wilt Chamberlain as my center. I'm taking Bill Russell as my power forward. I'm going to play 3. I'm taking Michael at the 2, and I'd have to go with Magic Johnson. As much as I love Steph Curry and a bunch of other players, I have to go with Magic Johnson just because of his versatility and his size. I would play with that team and play against any 5 guys you want to put on the court.
And who would be the 6th man of your team?
Ooh, good question. Well, if I couldn't be the starter, I'd be the 6th man, because I could be pretty versatile. So I'd be happy to do that. I actually did that with the Rockets, which shortened my career. I went down there and they said I couldn't play anymore. I said, well, hell, you guys aren't letting me play. I mean, I'm willing to take a subservient role. I just want to win. I mean, obviously the guy that comes to mind is just a matter of, who do you want size wise? I mean, one of the great 6 men of all time, of course, was John Havlicek. Everybody talks about him and the way he could fill in and the things that he could do. So certainly he'll be somebody to give consideration to in that regard. But there's a whole bunch of guys, but it's not just 5 guys. You don't win with 5. I mean, you got to have a minimum of 8. and you got to have, you know, another big guy. You got to have another guy who can play the wing, and another guy who can handle the basketball and run your team. So it's an interesting conundrum to have, but that would be the team that I pick. And you can pick a lot of other unbelievably great players. I mean, obviously Kareem, and people talk about Shaq and stuff. But the problem that people get to is you can't compare the players of today with the players in the past. You should pick players and teams based upon where they played and the decades that they played in. Play, you know, take somebody from the 50s, take teams from the 60s, the 70s, 80s, and it would be a much more interesting conversation to have. Because to be honest with you, if the guys that I played with, myself included, were playing today, do you have any idea how much better I would be and we would be? We had nothing when it came to training. We ate the wrong foods. We traveled commercial and had to get 4 hours of sleep to go and get to play the game the next day. These guys are on chartered flights, getting a good night's sleep. They have strength coaches, agility coaches, dietitians. I mean, it'd be unbelievable. I'd be stronger, faster, quicker, jump higher. It'd be incredible how good the guys from my era would be if we played today.
And that is the question that fans love to debate. But Rick, thank you so much for your time. It was great speaking
one
to you.
last thing.
I'm sure
One
we'll
last thing.
Of course.
Tell your fans, please stop having the conversation. Who was the GOAT? When I played, the GOAT, the GOAT, was the guy that screwed up. Okay, not the greatest of all time. And in team sports, you can't have that conversation. You can have the conversation: who's the greatest point guard? Who's the greatest two? If you want to have that conversation, now you have something meaningful. But you can't compare Wilt Chamberlain to Magic Johnson, and you can't compare Bill Russell to Steph Curry. I mean, it's just stupid, because the skills required to play each position are different. So to talk about the greatest of all time is ridiculous.
Listen, I appreciate the wisdom. Thank you so much for taking the time, Rick.
All righty, my pleasure.